The girl got pregnant on purpose to avoid the death penalty. But what happened next will shock you. Welcome to Stories TH. In this compelling video, we dive into the incredible story of Lucy Morales, a woman who fought relentlessly for justice and perseverance after being wrongfully convicted. Her story is a powerful reminder that no matter how dark life gets, justice and perseverance can change everything. If you believe in the power of justice and perseverance, make sure to hit the like button and subscribe to our channel, Stories TH, to never miss an inspiring story like this one. The Struggles of Innocence. The story of Lucy Morales and her fight for justice in the dim light of a courtroom. Where the air is thick with tension and the weight of justice is heavy, the final verdict echoes like a death sentence, not just to an individual, but to an entire family and a future that was stolen. This was the fate that Lucy Morales found herself facing. A young woman, seemingly with everything to live for, was wrongly accused of a crime she didn't commit: the brutal murder of a wealthy man, Alan Vargas. Her story is one that highlights the flaws in the justice system, the cruel effects of public opinion, and most importantly, the strength of the human spirit in the face of despair. Lucy's world came crashing down when she was sentenced to death for a crime she swore she did not commit. The murder of Alan Vargas, a prominent millionaire in the city, seemed like a case too perfect for the public to resist. The media painted a vivid picture of her as a heartless gold digger who had betrayed and murdered the man who had once loved her. The image of her as a manipulative woman, willing to use her relationship with Vargas for financial gain, was etched into the minds of the public. What the media, and later the legal system, failed to see was the truth of her innocence, her sorrow, and her desperate struggle to prove that she was being framed by forces far more powerful than her own. When the gavel came down in the courtroom, sentencing her to death, Lucy's world began to crumble. The dry thud of the wooden gavel was not just the sound of a legal decision, but a symbol of a society that had already decided her fate before she could even defend herself. With the media, the public, and even the court against her, Lucy was left with little hope. Her cries of innocence went unheard. Instead of finding solace in a fair trial, Lucy found herself being dragged away in chains, ridiculed and condemned by a system that seemed blind to her humanity. Her family, too, felt the weight of the accusations. Lucy's mother, Elena, desperately tried to defend her daughter, but the courtroom had already made its decision. The media painted them all with the same brush, calling them complicit in Lucy's supposed crime. Elena's heartache was palpable as she watched her daughter being led away. Her cries of "she's innocent" were drowned out by the cacophony of the courtroom and the press's relentless pursuit of a story to feed the masses. Even Lucy's father, Michael, remained silent, his sorrowful eyes reflecting the helplessness he felt in the face of his daughter's impending execution. The world outside the courtroom was no kinder. As Lucy was escorted to prison, the press continued to hound her with questions, accusations, and vile insults. The public, eager for closure and a clear villain, saw her as a cold-blooded murderer. They couldn't fathom that a young woman could be innocent, especially when the evidence seemed to fit perfectly with the narrative they had already accepted. Lucy's world was now a prison, not just in the literal sense, but in the emotional and psychological sense as well. The world outside was against her, and even inside the cold walls of San Quentin, she faced the scorn and mockery of fellow inmates who had no knowledge of her true story. But within Lucy, a flicker of defiance remained. She could not accept this fate, not without a fight. Yet, even with her inner strength, Lucy realized that the battle was not going to be an easy one. Her innocence was overshadowed by the powerful figure behind her wrongful conviction, Alan Vargas. It wasn't just his money and influence that condemned her, but the manipulation of the justice system itself. Alan Vargas, with his wealth and connections, controlled everything around him, including the legal proceedings that led to her death sentence. From the very beginning, everything seemed too perfect: the evidence, the testimonies, the timing all pointed to her, but it felt wrong. It felt like a script had already been written, and Lucy was nothing more than an unwilling actress in a tragedy she had no control over. In the prison, Lucy began to realize that she was not just fighting for her own life, but for the lives of those she loved. Her family, shunned by society, had to endure the pain of seeing their daughter labeled as a murderer. Her mother was turned away from stores, humiliated by the community for being associated with Lucy. The pain of seeing her parents suffer was just as crushing as the weight of her own sentence. Yet despite the isolation, Lucy's mind raced. How could she prove her innocence when the world had already condemned her? The turning point came when Lucy realized something that could change everything. In a moment of desperation, she remembered an old legal statute: pregnant women could not be executed. The thought was reckless, but it was the only chance she had left. If she could delay her execution, she might have a chance to find the real killer, expose the corruption, and bring the truth to light. She knew the cost of such a decision. It would mean using her body in a way she had never imagined, but the idea of dying without a fight was unbearable. Lucy's decision to get pregnant was a desperate act of survival, but it also brought with it even more public scorn. The media, which had already demonized her, now saw her pregnancy as a ploy to escape justice. Her family's reputation was tarnished further as the public speculated that she was using her unborn child as a shield. The cruelty of the situation was compounded by the fact that Lucy was not only fighting for her life, but also for the life of an innocent child who would be born into a world of hatred and suspicion. The public's reaction was swift and unforgiving. Lucy's story dominated the news, with headlines accusing her of manipulating the system. Social media erupted in anger, with thousands of people calling for her execution, some even claiming that the child she was carrying was doomed from the start. The weight of the public's judgment became another heavy chain around Lucy's soul. She was no longer just a prisoner in a physical sense, but a prisoner of the court of public opinion, where her every move was scrutinized and judged. In this moment of despair, Lucy found herself facing the full force of a corrupt system. The evidence against her seemed insurmountable. The media was against her, and even her own family struggled to support her in the face of overwhelming pressure. Yet, through it all, Lucy's fight for justice remained unwavering. Her decision to get pregnant, while viewed by many as a manipulation, was in fact an act of defiance against a system that had already condemned her to death without a fair chance. As the story of Lucy Morales unfolds, it becomes clear that her journey is one of resilience and survival in the face of overwhelming odds. Her struggle for justice is not just about her own innocence, but about exposing the dark forces that manipulate the legal system and the media for their own gain. Lucy's story challenges us to question the narratives that we are fed by the media and to consider the real truth behind the headlines. It is a story that forces us to confront our own biases, to recognize the flaws in our justice system, and to understand that sometimes the truth is buried beneath layers of corruption and manipulation. The power of justice and the fight for truth. The story of Lucy Morales in the shadows of a broken legal system, where power and wealth control the fate of the innocent. Lucy Morales found herself trapped in a nightmare she never imagined. Her story is one of betrayal, manipulation, and the relentless pursuit of justice, not just for herself, but for the truth that had been buried beneath layers of lies. Wrongly accused of a crime she didn't commit, Lucy's path was filled with obstacles, from a corrupt legal system to a media that turned her into a villain. Yet through it all, Lucy never gave up. She fought for justice, not just for herself, but for the many others whose voices were silenced in the face of power and influence. Lucy's ordeal began when she was accused of the brutal murder of Alan Vargas, a wealthy businessman. The media had painted her as a gold digger, a woman who manipulated Vargas for his money and then discarded him once he was no longer useful. She was charged with a crime she did not commit, her life unraveling in the court of public opinion before the legal system had even decided her fate. The trial, already marred by biased media coverage, seemed like a mere formality, a preordained verdict that the public was already convinced of. The case was so perfectly constructed, from the evidence to the testimonies, that it seemed impossible for anyone to question it. The moment the gavel came down, condemning Lucy to death, she realized just how deeply ingrained the injustice against her had become. The weight of the decision wasn't just the loss of her life, it was the loss of everything she had ever known. Her reputation was destroyed. The public, eager for a villain to fit their narrative, had already decided who she was. She was portrayed as a ruthless murderer, and the world seemed determined to make sure she stayed in that box. Yet Lucy knew the truth. She knew that she was innocent, but no one would listen. The media had already created an image of her that was impossible to shake off. As the court sentence echoed in her ears, she was thrust into a world where the truth didn't matter, where power, money, and influence ruled. The more she fought, the more her life seemed to slip away. Her only hope, it seemed, was her family, but even they were being dragged into the mire of public hatred. Her mother was shunned, her father was fired from his job, and the community that once supported them turned their backs in the wake of her accusation. But Lucy's fight didn't end there. Despite the overwhelming odds, she refused to give in to despair. In the darkness of her prison cell, Lucy began to think of a way to survive. She realized that the justice system, manipulated by the wealth and power of Alan Vargas, was not on her side. The public had already made up their minds, and no amount of protest would change it. But there was one thing she had learned from her years of hardship. If she wanted to live, she had to fight like never before. A bold and reckless thought crossed her mind. If pregnant women could not be executed by law, perhaps that was her only chance at survival. She knew it would be controversial, and that it would bring even more scorn upon her, but it was the only option left. In a world where everything was stacked against her, this was the only way she could delay her execution long enough to find the truth. Lucy wasn't using the pregnancy to escape justice. She was using it to buy herself time to uncover the truth and clear her name. But the moment she made this decision, she knew it would come with a price. Lucy's plan to get pregnant did not go unnoticed. The media, already sensationalizing her case, jumped on the news of her pregnancy, calling it a desperate ploy to avoid execution. The public reaction was swift and unforgiving. The world had already branded her as a murderer, and now they saw her pregnancy as nothing more than a manipulation of the system. The media flooded the airwaves with venomous commentary, accusing her of using her unborn child as a shield against the death penalty. The cruel words of the public, spurred on by the media, only added to the burden she already carried. Lucy's family, too, suffered under the weight of the public's judgment. Her mother was ostracized by the community, ridiculed for being associated with a woman accused of such a heinous crime. People refused to sell her groceries, and even worse, they threw rotten food at her, shunning her like an outcast. The once respected family was now a pariah in their own town, the consequences of Lucy's conviction spilling over to touch everyone in her life. Lucy's father, Michael, lost his job as a security guard. The man who had once stood tall in his community was now a shadow of himself, a victim of guilt by association. In the prison, Lucy's situation became even more dire. The other inmates, already convinced of her guilt, mocked and ridiculed her. The constant taunts about her pregnancy, combined with the media frenzy outside, made her feel more isolated than ever. She knew that she was seen as nothing more than a monster in the eyes of the world. But through all the mockery, a glimmer of hope still flickered within her. She didn't want to die not without a fight. But how could she fight when the entire system seemed determined to crush her? In the darkest hours of her confinement, Lucy found an unexpected ally. Clara Jameson, a young lawyer, began to question the integrity of Lucy's conviction. Clara, who had no previous connection to the case, was drawn to it by the inconsistencies she found in the evidence. She could sense that something wasn't right, that the case had been rushed and manipulated. The knife that was supposedly the murder weapon had no blood on it. The testimonies seemed rehearsed, too perfect to be true. Clara's instincts told her that there was more to the case than met the eye. Clara's determination to uncover the truth led her to a crucial turning point. Alan Vargas, the man behind Lucy's wrongful conviction, was not just a victim in the case, he was the mastermind. With his wealth and influence, he had orchestrated the entire affair to ensure that Lucy took the fall for his own sins. As Clara dug deeper into the case, she found more evidence pointing to Vargas's manipulation of the legal system. But the more she uncovered, the more dangerous the situation became. Clara knew that taking on such a powerful figure came with significant risks, but she could not back down. The truth had to come to light. Clara's investigation eventually led her to Teresa Vargas, the mother of Alan Vargas, who had lived in silence for years, allowing her son's crimes to go unchecked. Teresa's testimony would be the final piece of the puzzle, the truth that would finally expose the corruption and manipulation behind the case. But even as the evidence mounted, the danger grew. Clara, Michael, and Teresa were now in the crosshairs of a man who had the power to destroy them all. The trial that followed was a battle for justice. In a dramatic moment of defiance, Teresa Vargas took the stand against her own son, revealing the truth of his crimes. The courtroom was in shock as she exposed her son's role in orchestrating the murder of Luis Montiel and framing Lucy for a crime she didn't commit. The testimony was the turning point in the case, and the courtroom fell silent as the truth was revealed. With the evidence and testimony from Teresa Vargas, the case against Lucy Morales was finally overturned. The courtroom, once filled with judgment and hatred, now became a place of redemption. Lucy was declared innocent, and the public's perception of her began to shift. No longer was she the villain, they saw her as a survivor, a symbol of resilience in the face of overwhelming odds. Lucy's story is not just one of personal triumph. It is a testament to the power of justice, the strength of the human spirit, and the unwavering belief that truth, no matter how buried, will eventually rise. Despite the pain, the suffering, and the manipulation she endured, Lucy never gave up on her quest for justice. She fought for herself, her family, and for the truth that had been hidden from the world. Her journey reminds us that even in the face of injustice, there is always hope, and the pursuit of truth can change everything. The struggle for justice. Lucy Morales' journey from despair to redemption, the journey of Lucy Morales, is a testament to the incredible power of resilience, the unyielding pursuit of justice, and the strength to survive in the face of unimaginable adversity. Wrongly accused of a heinous crime she did not commit, Lucy's path was one of suffering, betrayal, and manipulation. Yet, through it all, she never gave up hope. The story of Lucy Morales serves as a powerful reminder that justice may be delayed, but it can never be erased. The determination to uncover the truth and expose the corrupt system behind her wrongful conviction ultimately led to her redemption and freedom. Lucy's nightmare began when she was accused of the brutal murder of Alan Vargas, a wealthy businessman with far-reaching influence. The media quickly latched onto the story, painting her as a heartless gold digger who had manipulated Vargas for his money and then discarded him when he was no longer useful. The evidence presented against her seemed overwhelming. Fingerprints on the knife, blurry surveillance footage, and the testimony of an anonymous witness. But despite the seemingly airtight case, Lucy swore she was innocent. Her world began to unravel as she was thrown into the media frenzy, where she was portrayed as the villain in a story she had never written. The courtroom was a scene of judgment before the trial even began. Lucy stood in front of the judge, facing a hostile audience that had already decided her fate. As the gavel struck, condemning her to death, the weight of the sentence seemed unbearable. The public perception of her had already been formed, and there was no room for doubt or reconsideration. Her family, too, was drawn into the scandal, their lives ruined by association with someone who had been labeled a murderer. Despite her cries of innocence, no one listened. In the prison, Lucy's suffering only deepened. The other inmates, convinced of her guilt, mocked and scorned her. The media had already created a narrative, and no amount of protest from Lucy could change the world's view of her. She was alone, abandoned by the very system that was supposed to protect her. The media painted her as a cold-blooded killer, while the law failed to see the cracks in the case that should have been apparent. With each passing day, Lucy's despair grew. The mounting pressure of her wrongful conviction threatened to break her. Yet, in the darkest moments of her life, when it seemed as though the world had turned its back on her, a flicker of hope remained. Lucy knew that she could not give up. She had been wronged, and the only way to survive was to fight back. But how could she fight when the entire system, from the media to the legal authorities, was against her? Lucy began to see a small opening in her dire situation, a sliver of hope in the face of an unjust system. She realized that there was one possible way to delay her execution: by getting pregnant. Under the law, pregnant women could not be executed, and Lucy saw this as her only chance at survival. It was a reckless and bold decision, one that would draw even more scorn and ridicule from the public, but it was the only option she had left. If she could survive long enough to expose the truth, perhaps she could clear her name and regain her freedom. But Lucy knew that her actions would come with consequences. She would be seen as a manipulator, a woman willing to sacrifice her dignity for a chance at life. But in that moment, it seemed like the only way to save herself. When Lucy's pregnancy became known, the media quickly seized the story. Headlines blared about her desperate ploy to avoid execution. The public, already convinced of her guilt, saw her actions as a further attempt to manipulate the system. The cruelty of the words hurled at her only intensified. The media portrayed her as a villain, a woman who would use her unborn child as a shield to protect herself from the consequences of her crime. But Lucy's motivations were misunderstood. She wasn't trying to escape justice. She was trying to buy herself time to find the truth. Her family, too, bore the brunt of the public's hatred. Lucy's mother, Elena, was shunned by the community. People refused to serve her in stores, throwing rotten food at her as if she were somehow responsible for the crime her daughter was accused of. Elena's suffering was unimaginable as she watched the world turn against her daughter, unable to do anything to help. Her father, Michael, lost his job as a security guard, and the community that had once respected him now saw him as guilty by association. The family, once proud and strong, was torn apart by the weight of Lucy's conviction. In prison, the torment continued. Lucy was isolated, mocked by the other inmates, and labeled as a murderer. The cruelty of the world outside, coupled with the harsh treatment inside the prison walls, made it seem as though there was no way out. Lucy began to question whether she would ever see the light of day again. But despite the overwhelming odds, she refused to give up. The flicker of hope she had clung to throughout her ordeal grew stronger. She knew that the truth had to come out, and she was willing to do whatever it took to expose the corruption that had led to her conviction. Enter Clara Jameson, a young lawyer who, against all odds, decided to take on Lucy's case. Clara was not swayed by public opinion or media narratives. She saw through the surface of a case and recognized the glaring inconsistencies that had been overlooked. The evidence against Lucy was circumstantial, and the trial had been rushed, with many of the testimonies seeming too rehearsed. Clara, driven by a deep sense of justice, began to investigate the case, uncovering the dark secrets that had been carefully hidden. Clara's investigation led her to a shocking revelation. Alan Vargas, the man Lucy was accused of murdering, was not the victim he appeared to be. Behind the facade of wealth and power, Alan Vargas was a master manipulator, using his influence to control the legal system and silence anyone who stood in his way. As Clara dug deeper into the case, she found evidence that pointed to Vargas's involvement in the murder of Luis Montiel, a key figure in the case. Clara realized that Vargas had orchestrated the entire affair, manipulating the law to make sure Lucy took the fall for his own sins. Clara's search for the truth took her to Teresa Vargas, Alan's own mother, who had lived in silence for years, allowing her son's crimes to go unchecked. Teresa's testimony became the key to unlocking the truth. As the investigation progressed, the walls began to crumble around Alan Vargas. The truth was coming to light, and it was only a matter of time before the world would learn what had really happened. In a dramatic turn of events, Teresa Vargas took the stand and testified against her own son, revealing the depths of his manipulation and deceit. The courtroom was in shock as Teresa, a mother who had once protected her son, now exposed the truth for all to see. With Teresa's testimony and the mounting evidence, the case against Lucy was finally overturned, and she was declared innocent. Lucy's victory was not just a personal triumph, it was a victory for truth, justice, and resilience. The road had been long and painful, but Lucy had never given up. She had fought for her freedom, and, in the end, she was vindicated. The story of Lucy Morales reminds us that no matter how dark the world may seem, there is always hope. Even in the face of wrongful conviction and public scorn, the pursuit of justice can prevail. Lucy's story is one of perseverance, courage, and the unbreakable strength of a human spirit. In the end, justice triumphed, and Lucy Morales emerged not as the villain she had been made out to be, but as a symbol of resilience. Her story serves as a powerful reminder that the pursuit of truth and justice is worth fighting for, no matter the cost. The journey of redemption and justice. The battle to expose truth and overcome injustice. The path to justice is often long, painful, and filled with obstacles, but is also one that reveals the power of resilience, determination, and the unshakable will to fight for what is right. Lucy Morales' story stands as a powerful example of how one person can overcome false accusations, manipulate systems of power, and ultimately uncover the truth. This is a story not just of a woman fighting for her life, but a deeper exploration of the societal and legal systems that often fail those who need them most. At the center of the story lies a tragic and unfortunate miscarriage of justice. Lucy Morales, a woman wrongfully accused of the murder of a wealthy businessman, Alan Vargas. The accusation is clear-cut in the eyes of the public and the media. According to the evidence, Lucy's fingerprints are found on the murder weapon. There is blurry surveillance footage showing her near the crime scene, and an anonymous witness testifies to her involvement. But Lucy, from the very start, proclaims her innocence. She swears that she did not kill Alan Vargas and that the evidence used against her has been fabricated. As the trial proceeds, the weight of the situation becomes even more oppressive. The media paints Lucy as a cold-hearted killer, a woman who used Vargas for his wealth and discarded him once he was no longer useful. Her trial becomes a public spectacle, with news outlets and journalists turning the courtroom into a stage for sensationalized reporting. Inmates in the prison, she is sent to see her as nothing more than a criminal, and the public calls for her execution with fervor. Lucy is trapped in a system that has already judged her, and despite her pleas of innocence, no one believes her. The societal and media perception of Lucy plays a crucial role in her conviction. In a world where public opinion often trumps the pursuit of truth, the media's role in shaping perceptions cannot be overstated. The story of Alan Vargas is sensationalized, and Lucy's identity becomes intertwined with the crime in the eyes of the public. It doesn't matter if the facts don't fully align with the accusations. What matters is the narrative that has been created. Lucy becomes a symbol of criminality, and no amount of protest can change the truth as it is seen by the world. Yet Lucy refuses to give up hope, even when it seems like the world has turned against her. Faced with a death sentence and an impossible situation, Lucy clings to the one thing that could possibly save her time. In an attempt to delay her execution, Lucy makes a drastic decision. If she can't clear her name, she will try to survive by any means necessary. She decides to get pregnant, as by law, a pregnant woman cannot be executed. It is a reckless and desperate move, one that will only make her more of a pariah in the eyes of the public. But Lucy has no other options left. If she cannot escape her fate, she will at least buy herself more time, hoping that the truth will eventually surface. The public's reaction to Lucy's pregnancy is swift and harsh. The media lambasts her for using an unborn child as a shield to avoid execution, portraying her as heartless and manipulative. The media attention only worsens Lucy's situation, as she becomes the focal point for public outrage. The cruel words and judgments directed at her are a reminder of how little compassion there is for the accused in a society that prefers quick judgments over careful investigations. Lucy's family, too, bears the brunt of the hatred directed at her. Her mother, Elena, and her father, Michael, are ostracized by their community. Elena is turned away from stores, and vegetables are thrown at her. Michael loses his job because of the scandal surrounding his daughter. No one is interested in hearing the family side of the story. They are guilty by association, and no amount of reasoning can sway the public. Inside the prison, Lucy's situation deteriorates. She is ridiculed by the other inmates, called names, and further isolated from the rest of the world. The once hopeful woman is now broken, barely able to keep herself together in the face of an unjust system. But despite all of this, Lucy's determination to clear her name never fades. She refuses to die without a fight, and she starts thinking of ways to expose the lies that have sentenced her to death. Then, unexpectedly, a glimmer of hope arrives in the form of a young lawyer named Clara Jameson. Clara, who has just started her career, takes an interest in Lucy's case. Despite the overwhelming evidence, Clara senses that something is wrong. She questions why the trial seemed so rushed, why there are so many gaps in the case, and why the witnesses seem so coordinated. Clara's decision to take on Lucy's case is bold, especially given the high-profile nature of the case and the powerful forces at play. But Clara is undeterred by the risks. She believes that justice must prevail, no matter the cost. Clara begins to dig deeper into the case. The more she investigates, the more she uncovers. She realizes that the evidence against Lucy is circumstantial, and the forensic findings are flawed. Clara's suspicion grows stronger that there is more to this case than meets the eye, and she begins to wonder whether Alan Vargas himself is behind the orchestrated smear campaign. As Clara examines the case further, she uncovers a chilling truth: Vargas was the one manipulating the system all along. What follows is a pursuit of truth that shakes the very foundations of the case. Clara's investigation reveals that Alan Vargas had a hand in creating the narrative that led to Lucy's conviction. He used his wealth and influence to control both the media and the legal system, ensuring that Lucy would be found guilty no matter what. Clara, with the help of investigative journalist Michael Ortega, follows the trail of deception and begins to expose the truth. The turning point in the case comes when Teresa Vargas, Alan's own mother, decides to break her silence. After years of turning a blind eye to her son's criminal activities, Teresa steps forward and testifies against him. Her testimony is the key to unraveling the web of lies that has been spun around Lucy's case. As she speaks the truth, the courtroom is stunned. Alan Vargas, once seen as an untouchable businessman, is revealed to be the mastermind behind the murder and the subsequent framing of Lucy. Teresa's bravery serves as a turning point for Lucy. It is her testimony that gives the final push needed to overturn Lucy's conviction. The courtroom, once filled with judgment and hostility, becomes a place of hope and redemption. Lucy is declared innocent, and her name is cleared. She is no longer the convicted murderer she was once believed to be. Instead, she emerges as a symbol of resilience, a woman who never gave up on the truth. Lucy's redemption, however, does not come without its costs. The system that failed her is not easily undone. The corruption and manipulation that allowed her wrongful conviction are still present, and those who once held the power to condemn her have not disappeared. But Lucy, with the help of Clara and Michael, continues to fight for justice, not just for herself, but for others who have been wronged by the system. Her journey is a reminder that justice can sometimes be delayed, but with perseverance, it can still be achieved. Lucy's story highlights the importance of standing up for what is right, even when it feels like the odds are against you. It is a call for everyone to challenge the system, to question the evidence, and to demand accountability. In the end, it is the truth that will prevail, and Lucy's journey is proof of that. The power of redemption. How one woman's struggle for justice sparked a chain of events. Lucy Morales had lived a life full of hardship, but nothing could prepare her for the nightmare that was about to unfold. It began in a courtroom where the weight of a false accusation was about to crush her spirit. Her hands trembled as the gavel struck, condemning her to death for a crime she didn't commit. The accusation? The brutal murder of Alan Vargas, a wealthy businessman whose life had been tragically taken under mysterious circumstances. The evidence seemed irrefutable: fingerprints on the murder weapon, a blurry video from a surveillance camera, and anonymous witness statements that painted a damning picture of Lucy as the killer. However, deep inside, Lucy knew that she had been framed. Her life quickly spiraled downward. The media latched onto the case, sensationalizing every detail of her supposed crime. She was vilified as a gold digger who had lured Alan Vargas into a relationship for his money, only to dispose of him when he no longer served her interests. The public outcry was fierce. Signs reading "Justice for Alan Vargas" and "Death to the Murderer" flooded the streets. At the same time, her family was ostracized, with her mother, Elena, suffering from public shaming, and her father, Michael, losing his job due to the association with Lucy. Lucy felt the weight of the world on her shoulders. Inside the prison walls, she was a pariah. Fellow inmates taunted and ridiculed her, calling her names like heartless killer and murderer. The isolation was crushing, and the fear of facing the death penalty hung over her like a dark cloud. Yet, amid the hatred and despair, one person saw something different: Clara Jameson, a young lawyer who had just started her career. Clara was determined to investigate Lucy's case and uncover the truth that so many had chosen to ignore. Clara's belief in Lucy's innocence wasn't just based on a gut feeling. It was backed by careful investigation. She pored over the evidence, examining every piece, every witness statement. Something didn't sit right. The forensic evidence seemed rushed, and the testimonies against Lucy were too perfect. Everything was orchestrated to convict her. As Clara dug deeper, she realized that Alan Vargas, the so-called victim, had the means and the motive to frame Lucy. The investigation had been manipulated, and the court had been swayed by media pressure and public opinion. One of the critical pieces of evidence that stood out to Clara was the murder weapon. Despite being found near the crime scene with Lucy's fingerprints on it, the knife showed no signs of blood, an anomaly that didn't add up. Clara's suspicion grew. She knew that someone powerful must have been behind the manipulation, and that person was Alan Vargas. Meanwhile, inside the prison, Lucy continued to fight her inner turmoil. She had been offered a deal by a lawyer, Alexander Suarez, who was sent by the people controlling the case. He told her to plead guilty in exchange for money to ensure her family's safety. Alexander's proposal wasn't just an offer, it was a thinly veiled threat. He warned Lucy that anyone who went against Alan Vargas would face dire consequences. At this point, Lucy had already lost so much. Her dignity was stripped away, her family was suffering, and she was at the mercy of a justice system that had failed her. But Lucy was not ready to give up just yet. She decided to hold on to a faint hope that somehow, someway, the truth would eventually be revealed. The situation changed dramatically when Clara met with Michael Ortega, an investigative journalist with vast experience uncovering corruption. Michael had a history with Alan Vargas and had long suspected his involvement in illegal activities. Together, Clara and Michael began to piece together the puzzle, and their breakthrough came when they uncovered a photograph linking Alan Vargas to the crime scene. The photograph showed a man named James Castillo, Alan's personal bodyguard, standing next to Luis Montiel, the man whose death had been covered up. James Castillo was no ordinary bodyguard. He had ties to the criminal underworld, and Clara quickly realized that he was the key to understanding the true nature of Alan Vargas's empire. The more they investigated, the clearer it became that James had been hired to murder Luis Montiel to protect Alan's illicit activities. But there was one problem: James was not willing to come forward. He was caught in a dangerous web of corruption, and any attempt to break free could cost him his life. Clara's determination grew as she uncovered more layers of deception. She knew she had to take her findings to the authorities, but doing so meant putting herself and Michael at risk. The shadow of Alan Vargas loomed large over their investigation, and the stakes had never been higher. In a twist of fate, Teresa Vargas, Alan's mother, came forward with explosive information. She had lived for years in the shadow of her son's actions, but could no longer stay silent. Teresa confessed that she had witnessed Alan's transformation from a loving son into a manipulative, power-hungry man who would stop at nothing to protect his empire. She revealed that Alan had orchestrated the murder of Luis Montiel and framed Lucy for the crime. Teresa knew that by coming forward, she was risking everything, including her relationship with her son. But her conscience wouldn't allow her to remain silent any longer. With Teresa's testimony, Clara and Michael had the final piece of the puzzle. They now had the evidence needed to exonerate Lucy and bring Alan Vargas to justice. The trial resumed, and this time, the tables had turned. Alan's facade began to crack, and the evidence stacked against him was irrefutable. The courtroom erupted in chaos when Teresa took the stand and denounced her own son. Alan's power and influence could no longer shield him. His empire crumbled, and the truth emerged from the shadows. Lucy was finally declared innocent. The weight of the wrongful conviction that had haunted her for so long was lifted. She was no longer the killer the world had branded her as, but a survivor, a symbol of resilience. As she walked out of the courthouse, she was greeted by those who had believed in her from the start, Clara and Michael. Their unwavering support had helped her navigate the darkest period of her life. Together, they had fought for the truth, and in the end, justice prevailed. The story of Lucy Morales is one of incredible strength, perseverance, and the power of redemption. It shows that even in the face of overwhelming odds, there is always hope. It reminds us that the pursuit of truth and justice is worth fighting for, no matter how difficult the road may seem. Lucy's victory is a testament to the resilience of a human spirit and the power of community support. She was not just exonerated, but she became a beacon of hope for those who feel helpless, for those who have been wronged, and for those who believe that justice is worth fighting for. Her journey didn't end with the verdict. It marked the beginning of a new chapter in her life, a chapter where she could finally live without the constant fear of death hanging over her. Lucy's child, once a symbol of her shame, would now be a symbol of hope. It was a new beginning for Lucy, for her family, and for everyone who had stood by her side in her fight for justice. This story serves as a powerful reminder that no matter how dark the world may seem, there is always a way out if we are willing to stand up for what's right and fight for the truth. Justice may be delayed, but it will never be erased, and those who seek it with courage and determination will always find their way. The power of forgiveness, a story of redemption and second chances. In life, many of us will face moments where we feel deeply wronged, whether by people we trust, institutions we rely on, or even by fate itself. When we are wronged, it's natural to feel anger, pain, and a sense of injustice. We might even find ourselves struggling to move forward because of the emotional weight of these wrongs. The story of the woman who suffered such hardships but found the strength to forgive demonstrates the power of redemption and the capacity of forgiveness to heal not only the one who is wronged, but also the one who does the wrong. The story begins with a woman named Lucy Morales, who was wrongfully convicted of a crime she did not commit. She was accused of murdering a prominent businessman named Alan Vargas. From the beginning, the evidence seemed overwhelming. Her fingerprints were found on the weapon. There was blurry surveillance footage of her near the scene, and several anonymous witnesses testified against her. To everyone around her, it seemed like an open and shut case. But Lucy knew she was innocent. Despite her unwavering insistence on her innocence, Lucy's trial was fast-tracked, and the court convicted her, sentencing her to death. The world outside the prison walls turned against her, with the media portraying her as a cold-hearted murderer, a gold digger who used Vargas's love to advance her own wealth and status. It didn't matter that Lucy maintained her innocence. Public opinion had already been shaped. The whispers and accusations from society were relentless, and the weight of these accusations was almost unbearable. Inside the prison, Lucy was subjected to harsh treatment from her fellow inmates. They viewed her as nothing more than a heartless killer, and this public perception was fueled by the media's portrayal of her as an irredeemable criminal. She was spat on, ridiculed, and alienated. Even her own family, who stood by her side, was affected by the public's judgment. Her mother, Elena, faced rejection from the community, and her father, Michael, lost his job because of the shame associated with his daughter's conviction. The isolation and loneliness Lucy felt inside the prison were crushing. She had no one to turn to for support. The only glimmer of hope she had was the possibility of an appeal, but this hope was soon shattered when she was approached by a lawyer named Alexander Suarez. Alexander, however, was not there to help her. Instead, he offered her a deal: plead guilty, and her family would be compensated. The offer was a grim reminder that in the world she now inhabited, justice wasn't about finding the truth, it was about money, power, and influence. Lucy was left with a heart-wrenching decision: accept the deal and live in silence, or continue to fight for her innocence, knowing that it might cost her everything. But despite the darkness surrounding her, Lucy made a choice that would alter the course of her life. She decided to fight, not only for herself, but for the truth, and most importantly, for her family. She knew that no matter what, she couldn't let herself become complicit in a system that had already failed her. Lucy's fight was long and exhausting, but it was not in vain. She had the support of one person who believed in her, Clara Jameson, a young lawyer who had just started her career. Clara was not intimidated by the powerful forces that had manipulated the case, and she saw something in Lucy that others couldn't. She believed in Lucy's innocence, and she was determined to uncover the truth. Together with the help of Michael Ortega, a seasoned investigative journalist, Clara began to dig deeper into the case. They uncovered a web of corruption that led them to suspect that Alan Vargas, the very man Lucy was accused of killing, had orchestrated the entire scheme to frame her. As Clara and Michael worked tirelessly to unravel the truth, they discovered crucial information that proved Lucy's innocence. They found that the evidence against her had been manipulated, the witnesses had been coerced, and the investigation had been rushed to meet a preordained conclusion. It became clear that Vargas had the power and resources to control the legal system and the media. His wealth and influence had allowed him to manipulate the case and silence anyone who stood in his way. But the truth did not come easily. It took the courage of Teresa Vargas, Alan's own mother, to expose the lies and deceit that had been hidden for so long. After years of silence, Teresa finally spoke out against her son, revealing that he had orchestrated the murder of Luis Montiel to cover up his illegal dealings. Teresa's testimony was the final piece of evidence that allowed Lucy's case to be reopened, and it ultimately led to Alan Vargas's downfall. Alan Vargas, the man who had caused so much pain and suffering, was finally brought to justice. The powerful businessman, who had once controlled everything and everyone around him, was now facing the consequences of his actions. The evidence against him was overwhelming, and the public perception of him shifted dramatically. No longer the hero, Alan Vargas was now a convicted criminal. His empire crumbled, and the truth finally came to light. In the midst of this turmoil, Lucy was finally exonerated. The court declared her innocent, and the years of suffering she had endured came to an end. The relief she felt was indescribable, but it was not just the legal victory that brought her peace, it was the redemption of her character, her strength, and her resolve. Lucy had faced the darkest moments of her life with courage and tenacity, and in the end, she was vindicated. But Lucy's story didn't end there. As she walked out of the courthouse a free woman, she was no longer the same person who had entered it. She was no longer the victim of a crime she did not commit. Instead, she was a symbol of resilience and hope, a woman who had fought for her freedom and for justice in a world that had tried to strip her of both. The lesson of Lucy's journey is clear. Forgiveness, resilience, and the pursuit of truth are powerful forces that can overcome even the most insurmountable challenges. Lucy could have let bitterness and anger consume her, but instead, she chose to forgive those who wronged her and fight for the truth. She chose to rise above the injustice that had been done to her, and in doing so, she found a sense of peace that she never thought possible. Her story is not just a reminder of the power of justice. but also of the importance of perseverance. It shows us that no matter how dire our situation may seem, there is always hope if we are willing to fight for it. It teaches us that justice, though delayed, can still prevail in the end, and that the truth will always come to light, no matter how hard those in power try to keep it hidden. As we reflect on Lucy's story, we are reminded that forgiveness is not about forgetting or condoning the wrongs that have been done to us. It is about choosing to move forward, to rise above the pain, and to find peace in our own hearts. It is about standing up for what is right, even when the odds are stacked against us, and knowing that, in the end, justice will prevail. Lucy's journey from victim to victor is a testament to the power of the human spirit and the strength we all have within us to overcome the most difficult of circumstances. It is a story that inspires us to keep fighting for what is right, to trust in the power of truth, and to believe that, no matter how dark the road may seem, there is always a chance for redemption. In the end, Lucy's victory is not just her own. It is a victory for all those who have ever been wronged, for those who have fought for justice, and for those who continue to hope that the truth will always come to light. The power of perseverance and resilience. Lucy Morales' fight for justice. In the midst of the most harrowing circumstances, Lucy Morales, the central figure in this gripping story, finds herself wrongfully convicted for a crime she did not commit. The court's verdict, sentencing her to death for the murder of Alan Vargas, echoes in the courtroom, a devastating blow not only to Lucy, but also to her family. However, Lucy's story is not one of hopelessness. Despite the overwhelming odds, she refuses to give in to despair, displaying immense perseverance and resilience as she fights for justice. Her journey unfolds in a world where powerful forces manipulate the law, media, and public opinion. But the strength of an innocent woman determined to clear her name gradually begins to expose the truth. Lucy is accused of the brutal murder of Alan Vargas, a powerful millionaire whose death triggers a media frenzy and public outrage. The evidence against her seems damning. Her fingerprints on the murder weapon, a blurry surveillance video, and an anonymous witness testimony that paints her as guilty. The story presented by the media amplifies the public's desire for justice, portraying Lucy as a cold-hearted gold digger who used Vargas' love only to betray him once he became useless to her. These accusations, however, are nothing but a script carefully written by those who seek to protect the true perpetrator. Alan Vargas, the very man whose life has been taken, is not as innocent as the world believes. Behind his image as a successful businessman and philanthropist lies a darker reality: his involvement in shady dealings and the manipulation of legal processes. Alan has the power to control the media, influence the police, and suppress any attempts to uncover the truth. With a vast network of influence, he ensures that Lucy is convicted quickly before anyone can truly look into the details of the case. Lucy is thrust into the role of scapegoat, someone to blame for a crime she did not commit, and no one seems willing to listen to her side of the story. Inside the confines of her prison cell, Lucy is forced to endure the cruelty of her situation. The other inmates mock her, calling her a murderer and a gold digger, while the guards remain indifferent to her plight. The world outside, fueled by sensationalized headlines and aggressive media coverage, has already decided her fate. Lucy's family is shunned by the community, with her mother being harassed by local vendors and her father losing his job. As Lucy is dragged through the criminal justice system, she faces the reality of being completely isolated from the world she once knew. She is on the brink of losing everything, including her dignity, but she holds onto a faint hope, a desperate attempt to survive the grim future that awaits her. In a moment of sheer desperation, Lucy contemplates a radical plan to get pregnant in order to delay her execution. According to the law, pregnant women cannot be executed, and Lucy sees this as her last chance to escape the death penalty. She makes a decision that will haunt her for the rest of her life, using her unborn child as a shield against the injustice that has been thrust upon her. This desperate act is not one of manipulation, but of survival. Lucy does not want to die. She wants time to prove her innocence, to find the truth that will clear her name. Yet, her actions only fuel the public's condemnation of her, as they perceive her pregnancy as nothing more than a calculated move to avoid punishment. The media outlets, ever eager to sensationalize her situation, latch onto the story of Lucy's pregnancy, framing it as an underhanded attempt to escape justice. The public outcry intensifies, with many condemning her for using an unborn child as a means of avoiding execution. Her family, already ostracized and torn apart, faces even greater hostility as they are associated with a woman who is deemed a murderer. The community's hatred for Lucy grows, and with it, her sense of isolation becomes even more profound. However, she holds onto a sliver of hope that someone, somewhere, will fight for her. Enter Clara Jameson, a young and ambitious lawyer who is determined to uncover the truth. Despite the overwhelming evidence stacked against Lucy, Clara senses something is off about the case. The trial had been rushed, the evidence circumstantial, and the witnesses too convenient. She suspects that powerful people, including Alan Vargas, have manipulated the system to ensure that Lucy remains convicted, and she is determined to bring the truth to light. Clara's perseverance in the face of enormous pressure is one of the most striking aspects of this story. She refuses to bow to the powerful forces that seek to suppress the truth, and her conviction serves as a beacon of hope for Lucy, whose faith in justice has long since been shattered. Clara's investigation uncovers shocking details, including the involvement of Alan Vargas' mother, Teresa, who is revealed to have known the truth all along. In a dramatic turn of events, Teresa, the mother of the man whose murder Lucy is accused of committing, steps forward and testifies against her own son. She exposes Alan's role in orchestrating the murder and manipulating the justice system to ensure that Lucy would be convicted. Teresa's testimony is a crucial turning point in the case, as it provides the final piece of the puzzle that clears Lucy's name. With Teresa's courage and Clara's determination, the walls of lies that had once caged Lucy begin to crumble. Ultimately, the case is reopened, and Lucy is exonerated. The weight of the false accusations and the years of suffering she endured are lifted, and she is finally free. The courtroom erupts in applause, and Lucy steps out into the world once again, this time with a renewed sense of hope. Her child, once seen as a symbol of her guilt, becomes a symbol of her strength and resilience. Lucy's victory is not just a personal triumph. It is a victory for truth, for justice, and for the power of perseverance in the face of overwhelming odds. Lucy's story is a testament to the strength of the human spirit and the importance of believing in justice, even when it seems impossible. It highlights the importance of never giving up, even in the darkest moments. The support of friends and the courage to fight for what is right can bring about incredible change. Lucy's journey from a wrongfully convicted woman to a symbol of hope and justice is one that serves as an inspiration to us all. It is a reminder that, no matter how insurmountable the obstacles may seem, perseverance and the pursuit of truth can lead to ultimate redemption. The power of family and redemption, a story of survival and triumph. In a world where the harsh realities of life can easily lead individuals to despair, it is often the strength of the human spirit and the support of family that drives people to fight for their survival. The story of a young girl named Hannah, abandoned at birth and forced to navigate a life of hardship, is a powerful testament to the unbreakable bond of family and the enduring hope that can guide us out of even the darkest moments. As Hannah grows older, facing unimaginable challenges, she learns the hard way that survival requires not only strength, but also the courage to seek justice and confront the wrongs of the past. Hannah's story begins with a tragic event. She was abandoned at a young age, left on the doorstep of a hospital, an innocent child without a name or family. Her early years were spent in the cold, sterile environment of an orphanage, where the warmth of a mother's love was nothing more than a distant dream. Despite the lack of emotional support, Hannah developed a sense of resilience that kept her moving forward. But as she grew older, the harshness of her reality became ever more evident. The constant feeling of being unwanted, of not having a place to call home, weighed heavily on her heart. Yet, she never stopped believing that one day things would change. As Hannah entered her teenage years, she began to develop a fierce sense of independence. However, the pain of being an orphan remained at the core of her being. She would often find herself wandering the streets, trying to find solace in the bustling crowds. But no matter where she went, she was always reminded of her solitude. One fateful day, while struggling to make ends meet, Hannah stumbled upon a family of strangers who would alter the course of her life forever. The Jones family, despite their own struggles, opened their home to Hannah. The compassion they showed her was the first time she experienced what it felt like to belong. They treated her as one of their own, offering love and care she had never known before. For the first time in her life, Hannah felt like she was part of something bigger than herself. It was in this family that she found the strength to confront her painful past and began to heal. However, Hannah's journey to redemption was far from over. Though the Jones family offered her the love and support she desperately needed, the shadows of her past continued to haunt her. As she grew older, she began to unravel the truth about her biological parents and the circumstances that led to her abandonment. The discovery that her birth mother had tragically passed away, leaving her father to struggle with alcoholism and neglect, shook her to her core. The revelation that she was abandoned not out of malice, but out of the inability of her father to care for her, left Hannah with a complicated mix of emotions. It was a painful truth to accept, but also gave her a sense of closure. The void she had felt for so long was beginning to be filled, not with resentment, but with understanding. Yet, as Hannah faced the truth of her origins, the bitterness of the world seemed to close in on her once again. Her biological father, who had made no attempt to find her, re-entered her life with a sense of entitlement, demanding that she forgive him for his neglect. The man who had once abandoned her now wanted her to embrace him as part of her life. It was a cruel irony for Hannah, who had fought for so long to find a sense of belonging, to now face the challenge of deciding whether or not she could accept the man who had failed her. In a moment of self-reflection, Hannah realized that she did not need to accept him in order to move forward. The love and support she had found in the Jones family were far more valuable than any attempt to reconnect with a father who had never been there for her. It was this realization that allowed Hannah to break free from the chains of her past. She understood that forgiveness was not about forgetting the wrongs that had been done to her, but about freeing herself from the anger and resentment that had kept her stuck for so long. As time passed, Hannah's relationship with the Jones family deepened, and she began to truly understand the meaning of family. The bond she had forged with the people who had taken her in were stronger than anything blood could offer. They had been there for her when no one else had, offering their love without expectation. It was this unwavering support that allowed Hannah to fully embrace her future and the possibilities that lay ahead. Hannah's journey of survival and redemption came full circle when she made the decision to help others who had faced the same struggles she once had. Inspired by the kindness of the Jones family, Hannah worked tirelessly to create a support system for children in foster care, those who, like her, had been abandoned and left to fend for themselves. She became an advocate for children's rights, working with organizations to ensure that every child, no matter their background, had the opportunity to experience the love and care that she had found. In the end, Hannah's story is one of resilience, perseverance, and the power of family. It is a reminder that no matter how difficult life may seem, there is always a way forward. Even in the face of abandonment, betrayal, and heartache, Hannah found the strength to rise above her past and create a future filled with hope. Her journey teaches us that our circumstances do not define us. What defines us is our ability to learn, to forgive, and to move forward in search of a better life. Hannah's success in overcoming her past serves as an inspiration to those who feel lost or abandoned. Her ability to find redemption, not through the forgiveness of others, but through her own ability to forgive and heal, is a powerful message of strength. As she continues to advocate for children in need, she has become a symbol of the potential for change, a living testament to the fact that with love, support, and determination, anyone can overcome even the most difficult of circumstances. Hannah's story is a reminder that no one is ever truly alone. Through the power of family, friendship, and love, we can all find our way to redemption. The story of the girl who became pregnant to avoid the death penalty is a haunting tale of survival, manipulation, and a quest for justice that touches deeply on the moral complexities of human behavior. The central character, Lucy Morales, finds herself caught in a web of lies, betrayal, and a brutal legal system that seeks to destroy her without truly understanding the truth. Her journey through the heart-wrenching legal battle, her fight for justice, and the complex choices she makes to save herself and her family highlight the emotional turmoil and resilience that comes with facing an unjust world. From the moment Lucy's trial begins, the cards are stacked against her. Sentenced to death for the alleged murder of a prominent businessman, Alan Vargas, Lucy stands accused of a crime she vehemently denies committing. The courtroom, filled with the echoes of a gavel, signals the beginning of a nightmare that Lucy cannot escape. Despite her claims of innocence, the evidence presented against her seems insurmountable. Her fingerprints on the weapon, blurry surveillance footage, and witness testimonies, each piece fitting together to perfectly leave no room for doubt in the eyes of the public. She is quickly transformed from a woman in distress to the villain, painted as a cold-blooded killer with no remorse. In the midst of her trial, Lucy is constantly haunted by her mother, Elena, who desperately protests her innocence and fights to protect her. Yet, despite the overwhelming odds and the love from her family, the justice system seems relentless in its pursuit of a conviction. Lucy's father, Michael, is silent and broken, filled with a deep sense of sorrow. The pressure of the trial and public scrutiny weigh heavily on the entire Morales family, leaving them on the brink of despair. Outside the courthouse, the public's rage only grows stronger. They demand swift justice for Alan Vargas, and Lucy is the scapegoat. The cruelty of the media and the public's willingness to believe the worst in her is palpable. However, as the story unfolds, it becomes clear that the situation is far more complicated than it initially seems. Alan Vargas, the man who is supposedly the victim in this case, is revealed to be a man of immense power, capable of manipulating the law and public opinion to serve his own agenda. Behind the scenes, he has orchestrated a plot to frame Lucy for his own murder, ensuring that she takes the fall for a crime she did not commit. As the pieces of the puzzle start to fall into place, it becomes evident that Alan's influence extends far beyond the courtroom, reaching into the police, the prosecutor's office, and even the media, all of whom have been bought off to ensure that his narrative prevails. Lucy, at her lowest point, finds herself facing not only the death penalty, but also the cruel indifference of a world that has already made up its mind about her. The feeling of being trapped, without a way out, begins to consume her. Yet, in the darkness of her cell, Lucy discovers a glimmer of hope, a small, seemingly impossible chance to escape her fate. When she realizes that pregnant women are not eligible for execution, a daring idea takes root. Pregnant and terrified, Lucy must navigate the murky waters of a broken system, choosing a path that feels both like a last-ditch effort to survive and an act of desperation that will forever change the course of her life. In her bid for survival, Lucy seeks help from a corrupt prison guard, George Ramirez, who, in exchange for a bribe, agrees to help her get pregnant. This decision, made out of sheer necessity, forces Lucy into a position where she sacrifices her dignity and body in an attempt to prolong her life. The ramifications of this choice are profound, not only for her, but for the family that will soon bear the consequences of her actions. Lucy's pregnancy becomes both a physical and emotional battle, as she struggles with the idea of using a child as a shield, knowing full well that the world will never look at her the same way again. The moment her pregnancy becomes public, the media takes hold of the story, turning it into a scandal that leaves Lucy more isolated than ever. The public, already eager to see her punished, now condemns her even more, accusing her of using her unborn child as a manipulation tactic to escape the death penalty. The harsh judgment she faces from both the media and society is overwhelming. Her family, too, becomes a target for public scorn. Her mother is shunned by neighbors, and her father is fired from his job due to the association with his daughter's crime. The cruelty of the world becomes painfully apparent as the Morales family is punished for a crime they did not commit, and Lucy is caught in a web of lies spun by powerful forces beyond her control. Despite these overwhelming odds, Lucy does not give up. She continues to fight for her life, not only for her own sake, but for the sake of her unborn child, who is now the only thing that might save her. However, she knows that the road ahead will be fraught with challenges. As she continues to struggle with her own guilt and shame, she comes to realize that her actions, though born of desperation, will have lasting consequences. The world may view her as a manipulator, but Lucy knows that, in truth, she is simply a woman trying to survive in a system rigged against her. As Lucy continues to face the unbearable weight of public judgment and the looming threat of execution, she receives a glimmer of hope in the form of a young lawyer, Clara Jameson, who believes in her innocence and is determined to uncover the truth behind the murder of Alan Vargas. Clara, despite the risks to her career and personal safety, takes on Lucy's case, diving deep into the evidence and uncovering inconsistencies that lead her to believe that Alan Vargas may be the true mastermind behind the crime. Clara's commitment to seeking justice for Lucy becomes the driving force behind the ultimate revelation of the truth. She uncovers key evidence that not only exonerates Lucy, but also exposes the lengths to which Alan Vargas has gone to manipulate the law and protect his own interests. The eventual revelation of Alan Vargas' role in the murder of Luis Montiel, his manipulation of the evidence, and the discovery of his connections to powerful individuals allows for the reopening of Lucy's case. With the help of Teresa Vargas, Alan's own mother, who bravely testifies against her son, Lucy's innocence is finally proven. The courtroom erupts in shock as the truth is revealed and Lucy is exonerated. For the first time in the story, justice prevails, and Lucy, who has endured so much, is finally free. The story of Lucy Morales is one of immense resilience, the strength to endure unimaginable suffering, and the unbreakable desire to seek justice. It demonstrates the power of truth and the courage it takes to fight for what is right, even when the world seems to be against you. It is a reminder that sometimes the road to redemption is long, difficult, and filled with obstacles, but that in the end, the pursuit of justice and truth can never be extinguished. Lucy's victory is not just her own, it is a victory for everyone who has ever been wrongfully accused, who has ever been judged unfairly, and who has ever been silenced by those in power. Through her strength, Lucy proves that even in the darkest of circumstances, justice can be achieved and redemption can be found. The story of Lucy Morales teaches us the enduring power of resilience and the importance of never giving up, even when faced with the harshest of injustices. Throughout her ordeal, Lucy finds herself trapped in a system that has already condemned her, manipulated by powerful forces, and abandoned by society. Yet, despite the overwhelming odds, she refuses to surrender her hope. This journey highlights a crucial life lesson. No matter how dire our circumstances may seem, we always have the power to fight for what is right and seek justice. It reminds us that we must not allow others' judgments or the weight of unfair situations to define who we are. For older adults who may feel overlooked or dismissed by society, Lucy's story is a poignant reminder that it is never too late to stand up for ourselves, seek support, and fight for our dignity. Furthermore, it emphasizes the importance of trust and the value of relationships, whether as family, a compassionate lawyer, or even unexpected allies who help us through the most difficult times. In the end, Lucy's victory is a testament to the idea that perseverance, integrity, and love for those we cherish can overcome even the darkest circumstances. For those in their later years, The story encourages embracing life's challenges with courage, knowing that hope can guide us through even the most overwhelming trials. Thank you for watching this powerful story on Stories TH. Lucy's journey shows us the importance of justice and perseverance. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to Stories TH for more incredible stories of resilience and hope. We appreciate your support and look forward to sharing more with you. Stay tuned.